friends, Jill here. Welcome back to Whispering Willow Farm. It's a rainy day in Arkansas. When we had a major rainstorm yesterday in the morning, then it cleared up. It was beautiful, it was hot, and then that was supposed to be the only percentage we had of rain, and lo and behold, the old Arkansas weather fools us again. So woke up this morning to rain, cold, and now the whole forecast has changed. It was supposed to be high 70s. Now it's like 61, 62, getting down to lower 40s. So I am really thankful that I did decide to stick with my idea of not planting the garden. But what I am going to do today, since I can't do anything outside, I have come into the greenhouse, and I'm actually going to be planting some grow bags. So if you guys remember, we had a space in our garden where we had intended on putting the greenhouse. However, it gets partial shade. So it's kind of shaded in the morning, then you've got a good few hours during the day, and then kind of shaded again, and it just wasn't the optimal space to put a greenhouse. But now I have a huge, large space there. And I thought, well, since I don't have a ton of extra bed space, I planted the green stalks, which really kind of helped with that. But I still had some flowers and peppers in particular that I was trying to think, where am I going to be able to shove these in a bed? And I thought, well, I have some grow bags just laying around that I'm not actually like using. Why not make a little grow bag garden? And I wanted to take you guys along while I was planting this and kind of my thought process through that, because I know many of you guys are working with a small space. Whether you're in an apartment, you know, maybe you're renting and you can't actually do anything in ground. I talk about container gardening being a good option, grow bag gardening being a good option, because it really is. You can have a concrete jungle in your backyard, for instance, and you can still grow in these grow bags and produce food. And the idea is to encourage you guys to take a step forward, take a step in action and growing your own food and being more sustainable and not being limited by the fact that you don't have a lot of space. You guys might actually be surprised the food that I'm able to crank out in a very small space. I don't have a huge raised bed garden. And I don't have a big, you know, in-ground no-till garden space either. I have just enough for my potatoes. So I really kind of utilize throwing in extra pots, my tower garden and things like that for fillers, because I'm always wanting to grow more and I always feel like I'm limited. So if that is you, I want to take a minute and encourage you that maybe grow bags are a really good option. I'll link grow bags below. The ones I'm using aren't actually available, but ones that I do recommend, ones that I will be purchasing to add more to, I'll leave in the description for you guys below. I actually started 3 grow bags earlier this week. I had filled them up with soil. I've actually got a lady down the road who wants some leafy greens, and I didn't really have a bed to designate to it, and I thought, well, I can't guarantee that I can sell her a whole lot, but I'd be curious to see how much production I could get out of a little grow bag. And so I actually planted some of those. There's actually some stuff popping up I can show you, but I just wanted to give you guys a few maybe ideas if you are in, say, a limited space or a space particularly where you're like putting grow bags on your concrete. One of the, I guess, negative things you're going to hear about grow bags is that they dry out quickly, and they do. And so maybe don't put them directly on your concrete. You could also add like some sort of just pallet and set the grow bags up on the pallet to where they're not directly on that hot concrete, which I think is a good option. I actually kind of like the idea of putting some sort of pallet out there. It's actually quit raining for a minute. I'm going to take you guys to the garden and show you what I'm talking about. Oh, y'all, it's a little chilly out here. So I kind of like the idea of setting up some pallets, primarily because I can get pallets for free. So when I think of the idea of building some sort of bed to house my grow bags in, I'm gonna have to buy the lumber for that. Lumber's still a little pricey in my area, and I'm not really wanting to do that. Nathan can get pallets for free, so I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think my plan is this space back here, just create this kind of square back behind me of pallets. And one I like to have, because this is a pretty big area. I don't know if y'all can see. I mean, that's a good size area. I can grow a lot in this area. So I thought about doing a small little square section over here on this side for pollinators. Throwing in some flowers, maybe going and buying some more herbs like bee balm and things like that. And then maybe over here, do another area of pallets where I can grow my extra things like peppers that I don't really have space for. Maybe throw in some bush bean varieties that would do really well in a grow bag. The cool thing about grow bag too is you can pretty easily add some sort of small trellis or structure if you are growing something that needs a little bit of extra. Maybe it's going to grow up like a pepper. They can get pretty tall. You can easily take some sort of structure, pop in there, and it will work relatively well. So I'd mentioned grow bags being a really good option. You know, if maybe you're in a concrete jungle, maybe you are, you know, limited on space, it's really good. It's also a really good option if you're transitioning to a different place. I mentioned several times we were in a transition during gardening season when I moved here and I grew everything in 5-gallon buckets. Grow bag would have been a really good option for that. You actually can even buy like 100-gallon grow bags. I'll find a picture and pop it in here and link it below, but Bootstrap Farmer has these huge grow bags which actually can replace a raised bed, and it might be better for what you're needing, especially if you don't have the means to like build a raised bed, or maybe you're not allowed to do that in the house you're at. I just think that it's a really good option, and I always want to encourage people, figure out what's going to work best. And if you are in a season where you're having to do container gardening or grow bag gardening because you're in a small space, don't be discouraged by that. Really kind of push the limits. Figure out what all you can do in these grow bags, because I think you might actually surprise yourself on the amount of food you can crank out in them and just the creativity that can take place when you're growing in containers. All right, so let's head down to the floor and get ready to plant. One thing to keep in mind, pretty much with anything, you know, I'm not going to put a huge indeterminate tomato in a small grower's bag, because indeterminate tomatoes can grow like 9-10 feet tall. Like, that's not, the grow bag that I'm growing in is really small. It's not even going to support the root system of that. So be mindful of the varieties. You are going to have to choose a variety that you know is going to thrive. Now, you could do a little dwarf micro tomato. You know, maybe if you're doing some sort of flowers, just don't do like a giant sunflower or something. I don't really know how well that would do in a grow bag. So be mindful of what it is that you're planting in them, and make sure that you just have good soil. Most of the time, we find a lot of issues with our container gardening or our green stalks because the soil was just not right. I'm using that compost, that mushroom compost that I have. I don't actually think this is the best soil. I think that a really loose potting mix would probably be ideal. However, I did buy that already and I'm not going to waste it. So I'm going to use this, and it is kind of just experiment to see how it does. If my things don't thrive though, I'm not going to blame it on a grow bag. I'm probably going to say I should have chose better soil. But as you guys can see here, I've got some stuff coming up. This is actually Chef's Medley lettuce mix. This came from Botanical Interest. Over here, I've got arugula and red Russian kale. I just heavily sowed this. Over here, I don't have anything up yet. And this was, oh, butter crunch. So I've still got a few. You guys can see here, these are pretty small grow bags, but I've got this one, and then I've got 4 over here already filled with soil. I think I'm going to grab some peppers and we'll get started. Check out this basil that I pruned. It already looks like pretty normal again. So that's really cool. I'd actually started all this basil. My plan was to stick it in the green stalk, and I didn't save a space for it. And there has to be a place for this in my garden. So I'm actually going to interplant this with a pepper. That is one of the really cool things, is you can, depending on the size of your grow bags, they get pretty big. And you can choose your size. If you have a bigger one, and say maybe you're growing a flower in the middle of it, you can grow things around it that don't really have a problem being planted with other stuff. You can really explore interplanting. My plan is to plant some of these basils together, some of my flowers and basils. You could even take, I'll probably direct sow some radishes around my peppers. So there really is the opportunity to explore a lot here, which I think is really nice. Sometimes, most of the time, my beds are all accounted for in the garden, and so I don't have a ton of beds that I can just really let my creativity take over, because most of the time what I'm planting is sold. So I think having my own little grow bag garden, if you will really allow me to express myself and just try a lot of experimental stuff. Now you do need to fill this pretty close to the top, which this isn't completely full because it's just had time to settle, but that's okay. You guys know I always love the opportunity to kind of just push the boundaries a little bit. And so I think that's really fun to be able to do. Also think grow bags. You guys know I talk about the importance of letting my kids have a place in the garden. Sometimes that can be stressful. Totally understand that. But grow bags, if you're wanting your kids to get more involved, is a really good option because they can really just kind of go wild with it. You can let them have their own area, plant whatever they want. Check out the roots on this. This is a lilac bell. So these grow bags, I don't even know. I don't even know what size these are. So these were just some grow bags. But most of the grow bags you're going to find online are going to be quite a bit bigger than this. So technically, this grow bag, I probably should just plant the one pepper in. I think that would probably be ideal. So I was going to go through and interplant a basil with it, but what I think I'm going to do is just put 2 basil plants in another bag and just let them be, because I don't want it competing for nutrients. So I'm just going to plant this to the first little nodule right here on the pepper plant. I don't ever really plant mine super deep. All right. And since peppers love the heat and it's cold here because thanks Arkansas, I'm actually leaving these in here, and we've got the black plastic laid down, the black landscape fabric. And with these grow bags staying on this black landscape fabric, I'm going to have to be cautious of them drying out more, and I can just water them more. That's an option. But I think because peppers love heat so much, it's actually going to be really good for them to be in here for a while. And so this may be one of those things, once all my plants move out from the plant sale, I'm going to throw some shade cloth on this greenhouse. And there are quite a few things I intend on just growing in here. So the peppers I'm probably going to leave in here for a while until I'm just like, it's peak conditions outside for them to really thrive. That also gives me enough time to collect pallets, figure out how I want that space over there. So I think it'll work really well. But if you do notice that your grow bags are drying out, you can water more. Like I said, I will actually be adding mulch on the top of this, which will help kind of retain that moisture in. I'm going to water this really well, and here we have 1 bag done, so that's encouraging. Now we just got a few more to go. So in this grow bag, I'm just going to be doing the opal basil and the Genovese basil. These also have really good root systems on them. I've just been really pleased at how well my plants have grown. Stick that bad boy in there. Now, I know some of you guys may be looking at this and think that I shouldn't be planting these together. They're too close, and you're probably right. But these are extra basils that I didn't really have a space for anyways. I will plant some of them in my center block bed. But other than that, these are kind of extra, so I don't mind experimenting a bit with extra stuff. And sometimes I don't take risks, right? Like, I'm not taking a risk in planting my tomatoes outside right now. We had a dip in the forecast. I got that weather advisory. That's not something I'm willing to risk. However, my basils, the peppers that I can keep in here, those are things that I don't consider as risky. I don't know, especially because these are basils that if everything went bad and they ended up dying, yes, I had my time investment, I can go to the store and buy basil. You know what I mean? So I do encourage you guys, take risk on certain things, that it's not going to be a huge loss if something goes wrong. For me, I can't take the risk on planting my whole garden because I have those crops accounted for. Something like this is where I'll probably venture out a little bit more, where I'm probably more apt to taking a risk than with my tomatoes. But here we have our basil. It smells really good, and it's actually really pretty too. So I think this is a cool way, especially Bootstrap Farmer has these grow bags that are multicolored. They're really pretty. If you're wanting to add a little pop of color to your garden, I think they're a good option too. So here is my white African marigold. I didn't even know marigolds got this tall. And I think that's because, and I've realized, one, this is extremely tall. I mean, no doubt about it. This is extremely tall. However, I remember that when I buy my marigolds every year, I'd buy a dwarf variety. So they get really wide, but they never get tall. Like they're just this cute little bushy, and I interplant them with my tomatoes. This is huge. I don't even know if this is what this is supposed to look like, but I'm gonna plant it in here. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to direct sow some radishes around it. So this would be a really good idea, especially if you had a bigger grow bag and you were able to do that. Planting some sort of flower, planting some radish, some baby beets, maybe even some sort of carrots depending on the year, time of year that you're planting your grow bags. I think it would do really well. Check out those roots. That is one stinking marigold. Wow. So another cool thing about the grow bags is you have the ability to move them. So for me, with the grow bags that I am wanting to attract pollinators, if I notice that I am lacking pollinators in a certain part of the garden, what I'm probably going to do is just move some of these flowers, the marigolds, the zinnias. I wanted to try a couple zinnias in a grow bag. I have the ability just to pick those up and move those to a part of my garden where pollinators aren't coming to as much. And so it's just kind of a really good way to help attract the pollinators where you need them. And I know some people struggle with that. I've heard a lot of people say they lack pollinators on their squash and zucchini and they're having to hand pollinate. I think maybe putting something like this around those beds, if that's something you're having an issue with, would be a really good option. Check that out. Man, I'm doing good today. Here I have a Shishito Pepper. Here's another little guy. I don't know that I'm gonna plant, I guess I'll plant them both in there. These desperately, I kind of expressed that to you all the other day. They were just really lacking nutrients in that 2.5 inch pot. So I don't think it'll be long before I see these little guys just start to take off in all this mushroom compost. They just have a lot more room to grow, a lot more nutrients to help feed them. So I'm pretty excited about that. So I have a lot more of these grow bags. I just have to fill them is pretty much what I'm gonna do. So this will be the last bag that I already have filled that I'm gonna plant today. This is that ollie pepper. If I am remembering correctly, I think this is that little bitty yellow pepper. I've got 2 pepper plants in here. The roots are coming out the edge. You guys can see that. I'm gonna go ahead and plant both of them in here and just see what happens, because I do have another one. I think I am gonna separate them out though and give them some space in here. And we'll see. Look at that. That's amazing. Well, the whole day's not wasted. Even though it's rainy and nasty, I was still able to come in here and get my hands dirty. Plant some food. That always makes me feel good. All right. Just like that, I'm growing food. You know what I bet would be, or do really well in a grow bag? I've got these little double blend dahlias. I bet those would do pretty good in a grow bag. You guys saw though just how simple that was. When you think about getting your kids involved, you obviously can see that's a pretty simple task. Now I've got this whole little section down here of food and flowers. It would be really, really good for some nasturtiums. You could even put a grow bag of nasturtiums near a trellis and let it vine up. That'd be really cool. If you didn't have means to plant it in ground, you could come up with some sort of TP trellis system maybe. I bet eggplants would do really good. I'm just sitting around like taking inventory of what all I have in the greenhouse, and I'm like, I think I could grow a lot in the grow bags, and it's really good just for that extra added space that I needed and I didn't really have a bed for. So, and I honestly bet these are just going to do so much better now that they've got more room to expand and grow. So I am really excited about that. I have no doubt that you could get super creative with grow bags, especially if you're in a limited space. I just want to encourage you, don't let your space limit you to not grow food. You guys saw how easy that was. Say you didn't have the means to start your own things. That's okay. You know, go to farmers markets, try to go to plants, seek out your local farmer, see if they're having some sort of plant sale where you can support them. You can just go buy the starts already established, buy a couple grow bags, and literally start growing food no matter where you are. I just want to encourage you so much to not get caught up in what you don't have and be encouraged about what you can do where you are. Trust me, trust me, trust me. I understand how hard it is to get caught up in what someone else has and wanting that. I spent a season of my life in that particular season always trying to reach the goals of someone else. And one, I got really discouraged and I realized comparison was stealing all my joy, right? And so I really shifted from the mindset of how can I achieve what this person is achieving? How do I get more space? How do I do this? How do I have more animals? And what I did was I really just flipped a switch, right? And instead of getting so caught up in what I couldn't do and what I didn't have, I started putting an emphasis on what I could do and being really creative in that space. And I just want to encourage you guys, get creative. Don't be discouraged by what you can't do, and really emphasize and put energy into what you can do, because I think you would be surprised how much food you can crank out in a small space. And knowing that you are making a difference in our food system, you are making cultural change in your family, for yourself, how you grow food, how you source food, you're doing something. And that's more than a lot of people can say. And so I know as we're approaching garden seasons and people are putting in their gardens and they're showing off all the wonderful things, which I am all for that. I show off my garden, I show off my greenhouse, I'm proud of it, right? These people aren't doing it, they're doing it probably in a place of just feeling really proud and accomplished, and they should do that. But I don't want you guys to get caught up in wanting that so bad that you lose sight and lose value of what you have to offer and what you can do, even if you're in a small apartment, even if you don't have any grass at all. Grab a Greenstalk, plant that thing on your patio, you know, get a free pallet, buy some grow bags, get a tire and fill it up with soil and grow in a tire. There's so many things you guys can do, and I just want you to feel encouraged by that and not discouraged, and don't live in a season where you're just letting comparison steal your joy. You go out there and you be something that someone aspires to be like, and you promote change so well. You show how innovative you can be in a small space, that you encourage someone else, hey, you know what, I don't have a lot, but that girl or that guy, like, they're really killing it with their small space. I want to be like that. So let's just kind of gather around each other and let's just support each other. And even though our journeys look different, even though the sizes of our gardens and our farms and our homesteads look different, we're all adding such great value to our lives, to the lives of others, to the food systems and being sustainable, that I just really want to leave you guys with some encouragement that I think you're doing great, and keep doing it, because what you're doing looks different than what I'm doing, and what I'm doing looks different than somebody else, but we're all kind of playing a key role in the main large vision of this. And so keep at it. I would love to see what you guys are growing in grow bags. I would love for you guys to tag me on Instagram. I'll put it below. If you're growing stuff, how you're being creative with your small space, it's something I'm really intrigued with. I always just find it so amazing how people just get so creative when they don't have a large space, and how they're still able to grow so much food. I admire you guys so much. I just think it's easy to grow food when you have a large space, right? Because you can do in-ground gardening, you can do no-till gardening, you can throw up some raised beds. There's so many options, but you're kind of limited on options when you have a smaller space. And so you really have to tap into that creativity, and you have that determination and that drive to want to try to make it work when everyone else says, oh, you don't have the space. And I just really admire that. I think it's really cool what a lot of you guys are doing, even if you do have a larger space. Obviously, I think that's pretty cool too. But I would love to see what you're doing with your small space, what you're doing with your grow bags, how you've been creative this gardening season. So I look forward to seeing your photos. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll talk to you soon.